The fire raged out of control for over an hour. Fire officials say the blaze spread quickly from Cox Car Care Center to Capital Glass and Trim due to paint and paint thinners stored in the car care center. 2 firemen were slightly injured when a wall fell into the street. Other firemen suffered from heat, but there were no serious injuries. Firefighters could do little more than contain the blaze to keep it from spreading to a gas station and other surrounding buildings. Officials could not give a dollar amount on the damage, but the car care center and Capital Glass were total losses. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
For this year, it will be, and I think I'll wait until I'm older for any future plans with any other pageant, but I'm not even sure if I'll do that.
So you might one day maybe be a Miss America contestant?
I might. I don't know. I haven't planned on it yet.
What plans do you have for sure? You want to be
majoring in accounting and business, and I'd like to go into the FBI as a special agent. My mother's a special agent, and we'd be the first mother-daughter team.
What would you do as a special agent?
Well, from what I know about it, I don't know all that much because I'm not an agent yet, but I'd be working with white-collar crime, hopefully, but I guess that would be up to them.
Senator McDonald spoke today at the site of the proposed market near Garrett Coliseum. He says the $2 million for the farmers market is included in the 1983 State General Fund budget as a conditional appropriation. He says he's urging Governor James to make sure the money comes through.
The $2 million will be required for capital improvement of the area. It will build the facilities. It will provide for stalls for producers to market their products. It will provide cold storage facilities for the commercial interest to come in and use this area to transact their business.
A temporary farmers market was set up at the site about 3 weeks ago. Area farmers say it was a tremendous success. Senator McDonald, who's on a tractor tour of the state as part of his campaign, says once established, the farmers market will pay for its own upkeep. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
On that, and you can priority and expend these funds. The $2 million will be required for capital improvement of the area. It will build the facilities. It will provide for stalls for producers to market their products. It will provide cold storage facilities for the commercial interest to come in and use this area to transact their business. It will, in effect, bring produce into the area in the off-season, and then during this Alabama season, produce will be bought here and sold to both local consumers and to these commercial interests who will in turn ship the produce out of the area. Now, Governor James made a commitment.
Any experience in the political arena. Well, single-issue politics is one of the issues, getting the government off the backs of the people and out of the people's pockets. The best way is to reduce the size of government and thereby reduce taxes. You cannot reduce taxes without reducing the size of government. It's an impossibility. Both the Republicans and the Democrats stand for big government and more government, hence we're going to pay higher and higher taxes.
How do you
enable certain privileged businesses? We want to repeal that and make it so that everybody pays a fair share, so that there are no privileged businesses. We have numerous businesses, and they should be able to compete with one another on an even footing. We'll go back to 1978 fair market value, and the assessed value will be 10% of that, and then we will have a 4% tax on the 1978 assessed value.
Chief of Detectives Major E.B. Alford says authorities have been looking for Scott since police were involved in the shootout with 23-year-old James Duhart early Sunday morning. Authorities say the getaway car driven by Duhart was registered to Scott, and police also found Scott's driver's license in the car. Major Alford says investigators found Scott's body today.
This morning, during the normal processing of the robbery getaway vehicle, it became necessary to force open the trunk compartment, at which time the body of a black male was discovered. Through fingerprint comparison, the body was identified as that of Curtis Scott, black male of Early Street. The subject was apparently dead before being placed in the trunk.
Major Alford says a heavy plastic bag was covering Scott's head, and his feet and hands had been tied with a nylon cord. An autopsy is being performed to determine how Scott died. In the meantime, with the exception of the robbery and assault with intent to murder charges, no other warrants have been filed against Duhart. Police say Duhart, who was hit 25 times by shotgun pellets and bullets, remains in guarded condition at Jackson Hospital.
The upper chamber began its work about 25 minutes later than the 3 p.m. startup designated by the governor. Senators approved a meeting schedule that would have the Senate in session every day for the rest of the week. The Senate stayed in session long enough to receive bills and resolutions. As soon as they recessed, the Finance and Taxation Committee gathered to act on several bills already assigned to that committee. The Senate Money Committee indefinitely postponed a bill allowing counties and cities to borrow against anticipated property tax revenues. Another property tax bill was approved by the committee. The bill, sponsored by Montgomery Senator Don Harrison, would propose an amendment to the Constitution that would lower the assessment rate on commercial property from 20 to 13% and decrease residential assessment ratios from 10 to 6.5%. In addition to the reduced assessment rates, the bill would cancel any recently granted reductions in millage by cities or counties, done so in an effort to keep down the anticipated increases in property taxes. The committee also approved two measures that would restore a 1% conditional appropriation given most colleges and universities during the regular session. A bill giving city police officers the right to serve search warrants was also approved. Most of the other major Senate committees will meet in the morning, with the Senate coming back tomorrow afternoon. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News in the Senate.
From Montgomery, Alabama, Stephanie Hicks. To Stephanie Hicks, your flowers, your sash.
Well, this is not a beauty pageant. The National Teenager Pageant is based on scholastic and leadership achievement, poise and personality and appearance, but it's not per se a beauty pageant.
We have swimsuit competition and all of that, don't you?
No, there's no.
Well, there you have it.
Forgotten quickly. We have a tendency to do that. We have a system that's built to the point that no rights for the victim exist. None whatsoever. Only to survive the best way you can while we coddle the criminal. This and other injustices are on a daily basis in your city and all across these United States. It's aided by the fact that Miss Smith tells us as he was leaving the store, he leaped the counter and fell in the low-rent housing projects that we think that's helping us a lot with the crime. We have a secret witness program that's very active. Every morning we have about a page that has about 50 call-ins on it.
One of the questions asked of the Supreme Court relates to Governor James' budget isolation reform passed in the first special session of last year. The representative asking the question is Governor James' old nemesis on the isolation issue, Birmingham's Representative Bob Gafford. Representative Gafford is asking the Supreme Court whether the governor can require his budget isolation to appear on the September primary ballot, whether the governor overstepped his authority in doing so, whether the legislature had the authority to change the election date of the isolation issue originally, and whether it can again. The legislature has regularly moved the election date of constitutional amendment questions in order to group them together, but the budget isolation issue is complicated by some parliamentary procedures never used in past election date changes. The governor's office is essentially asking the other question of the Supreme Court, and it relates to the governor's reform of the Alabama Commission on Higher Education. There are two bills in that reform package, one a constitutional amendment to establish a more powerful governing body, and a proposed law that outlines the authorities. The House and Senate each passed a resolution asking the Supreme Court if just the proposed law would be enforceable on universities that were established by the Constitution, namely the University of Alabama and Auburn University. The sponsor of the reform package and the resolution asking the question of the Supreme Court, Representative Lee Pegues, says if the Supreme Court indicates that the proposed law would not apply to the constitutionally created universities, then both the constitutional amendment and the law reforming the powers will be pursued. But if the Supreme Court indicates that the law would give AIC the power to control courses at those two universities, then only the proposed law will be pursued. Officials at the governor's office say they hope that the Supreme Court will answer the question by midweek. The House also took note of the reported financial problems with the general fund, passing a resolution allowing the House and Senate to hold joint hearings into the problem That resolution, sponsored by Representative Pete Turnham, has yet to be considered by the Senate. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in the House of Representatives. If in fact the ruling does in fact enjoin the state from enforcing the Voluntary Prayer Act until you have carried out all of the appeals that you might want, is there any problem on your part about not enforcing that law until it is fully appealed?
Chris, that's a very good question. And in one sense, it hits the heart of the fundamental question as to whether the courts have any jurisdiction whatsoever over prayer in schools. And of course, we think the Constitution prohibits their maintaining jurisdiction. So you ask a good question, but still I should not answer it until I can see the opinion that the judge has issued.
The appeals court says Judge Varner's December order to release the prisoners was impermissibly intrusive on the state's prerogative to administer its prisons and parole system. Varner ordered the release because of overcrowding in the state's prisons and because he said he just couldn't wait for the state to correct the problem any longer. The first release of 277 state prison inmates came in July of last year, and Varner's order for a second release came in December of 1981. State officials fought both orders, the first time all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, but the state lost and prisoners walked away free. Now the appeals judges say that Judge Varner had no right to order any prisoners freed, but they say the first release is now a moot point because it's already taken place. Their decision deals with the December order. Attorney General Charles Graddick, who led the fight against the prisoner release, says the ruling is a great victory and that it's been too long in coming. Graddick says the justices listed 3 points in their opinion. First, they say the judge abused his authority, that his decision wasn't supported by the evidence, and they sent the case back to Varner with instructions. Attorney for inmates John Carroll says he's not sure what their next step will be, although he says he will continue to pursue the release of inmates as long as the opinion gives them room to do so in the district court. If not, Carroll says they'll ask for a full review of the case in the 11th Circuit. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
In fact, the libertarian ticket is the law and order ticket. You have other candidates who are telling you that they're for law and order, but we are for the ultimate in law and order, and that is to force the government itself to obey the law and set the example. The state does not belong in the liquor business. You cannot run, in fact, you can't run a government like a business, like many candidates are trying to tell us. A government is not a business, and it should not be run like a business. It should be run efficiently, and it should be held to its constitutional limitations. And in the state of Alabama, those are protection of the citizen in his enjoyment of life, liberty, and property. No other functions. Picture a feeding trough in a pig pen, and it's full of money and benefits that the taxpayer puts in there. And the Republicans want to get to it, and the Democrats want to get to it. So every so often there's an election. Now, there's not enough room for all of them at once. So they have an election, and whoever wins gets access to the feeding trough. The libertarians want to take the feeding trough away.
I know that one president of one technical college said to the president of another, why don't you go on and give the man $100 and get him off of your back? Or the president that wouldn't contribute.
On
On Saturday, July 25th, 1981, the Alabama Department of Corrections received word shortly before noon that the U.S. Supreme Court had ruled in favor of federal judge Robert Varner's order to release 277 state prisoners. The release began immediately and was completed by 4 o'clock that afternoon. After that, Varner again ordered a mass release, this time of 325 inmates to be set free in December last year. But state officials argued that Judge Varner had no right to issue such a ruling, and the 11th Circuit agreed. Attorney General Charles Graddick led the fight against Judge Varner's orders for releases. Graddick says the ruling is a great victory, and he says he feels like it's been a long time in coming. John Carroll, attorney for the inmates, says he wants to study the opinion to determine what direction he'll take. He says if the opinion allows, he'll continue to pursue inmate release through the district court, because he says the situation in Alabama's prisons is just as bad, if not worse, than it was a year ago. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
In this state and pick up more money than we'll be able to raise throughout all of the state. He'll be able to make 4 stops and raise more money than we're going to be able to raise. But we're going to spend ours more wisely, and we're going to use our own creativity, and we're going to use Alabama people, and we're going to convey the message that I'm the best man for this office.
A bill designed to lower property taxes made major gains in the Senate, receiving Finance and Taxation Committee approval shortly after being introduced by Montgomery Senator Don Harrison. Senator Harrison's bill proposes a constitutional amendment that would lower the assessment rates of commercial and residential property. If approved by the voters, residential property would be assessed at 6.5% of fair market value instead of the current 10%. Commercial property would drop from 20% to 13%. The constitutional amendment would also cancel any millage reductions granted by cities, counties, or school boards in an effort to reduce the anticipated increase in property taxes. Another property tax-related bill introduced didn't do so well in the Finance and Taxation Committee. Senator Dewey White of Birmingham wants counties to be able to borrow money against anticipated property taxes. Senator White says tax notices will be mailed out late in some counties, and the county commissions need money to operate. The bill was indefinitely postponed after some committee members suggested the tax notices will go out late, so taxpayers won't receive them until after the fall elections. The Finance and Taxation Committee met so hurriedly that not one copy of the bills voted on was available to committee members, and in some cases the bill number and sponsor weren't known. Many of the bills in the governor's crime package could be considered during the Senate Judiciary Committee meeting in the morning. Since the Senate has decided to meet every day this week, a full Senate vote on the crime bills could come by Thursday. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News in the Senate.
The House gavelled in today to a number of issues, including the governor's proposed reforms. Many of the representatives were upset they'd been pulled away from their campaigns and argued over meeting 5 straight days to get the session over or stretch the session out in order to campaign as they go along. The issue was never resolved. 2 representatives had questions they wanted the state Supreme Court to resolve. Representative Bob Gafford of Birmingham offered a resolution asking the Supreme Court for an advisory opinion about the governor's efforts to place his budget isolation constitutional amendment on the September primary ballot. And Representative Lee Pegues offered a resolution asking the Supreme Court if it were necessary to pass both a constitutional amendment and a proposed law to strengthen the Alabama Commission on Higher Education. The proposed constitutional amendment is intended to apply to the constitutionally created University of Alabama and Auburn University. The resolution asked the court if those 2 schools could be governed by the proposed law. If it can, Representative Pegues says it would eliminate the need to pass the proposed constitutional amendment. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in the House of Representatives. Is there any problem on your part about not enforcing that law until it is fully appealed?
Chris, that's a very good question. And in one sense, it hits the heart of the fundamental question as to whether the courts have any jurisdiction whatsoever over prayer in schools. And of course, we think the Constitution prohibits their maintaining jurisdictions.
But the point is that the bill that we passed is in compliance with the federal rulings of the past. So if indeed they're going to rule this bill unconstitutional, when it gets to the Supreme Court, they are in effect going to have to reverse themselves.
This is McKenzie, Alabama. About 1,200 people live here. Most of them work in one of the town's sewing factories, or at the plywood mill, or they farm. And about a third of those 1,200 are boiling mad at two members of the city council.
Why don't they go along with the mayor and give her a voice, as they have all the mayors in the past? Just wait a minute, Otis. Wait. They have in the past, went along with the mayor, not against everything, and she's elected just like the council is.
Just as good to her as she's been to us, just as cooperating. We had just the council and the mayor is going to have a get together and try to get close together. She sat up on the corner of that table over and swung that foot and looked out the door, and she never heard. She didn't say nothing about nothing what we suggested. She didn't say it's right, it's wrong, or nothing.
We hadn't had a mayor till we got the one now that would stand up with us. The mayor's been the problem. You can't do nothing with him because he's with the rest of them. He's got to do what they tell him to do.
He's yet the mayor.
Yeah, he's still running things now. That's why that they had...
The former mayor is still...
Yeah, he's still running things. See, that's why they put another fella in to run against her, because the statement was made, I heard 2 or 3 say it, if they could get this other fella in, it would go on just like it was. He didn't know about being a mayor, but Fletcher would run it just like he's running it when he was in there. Well, bless God, he's still running it now.
Sure is. He ain't giving Betty a chance.
No, we ain't had a chance for nothing.
They're against her because she's a woman. They don't want no woman boss.
City Mayor Betty Stinson is angry too.
In your opinion, are the citizens of McKenzie, Alabama being given their constitutional rights by being allowed to attend the meetings and ask questions and to know what the financial situation of the city of McKenzie is?
No, sir, they are not. They can attend the meetings now, but I think any person on the street will tell you that since I've taken office is the first time that they have been able to attend a council meeting in McKenzie and know what's going on.
State law says the council must have 2 council meetings each month. According to Mayor Stinson, though, the 2 council members have a different idea.
Have you told the council members they are violating the law by not having 2 meetings?
Yes, sir.
What have they said to you?
They never had them before, and they're not going to start now.
The people of McKenzie who are upset about the situation here say that Councilman Otis Watson and Earl Bennett are running the city of McKenzie like a private estate and not listening to the people. Even the police chief is part of the ongoing dispute in McKenzie. You'll have more on that part of the story tomorrow night. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News, McKenzie, Alabama. About a mile from the McKenzie City Hall, some citizens live in unpainted shacks with toilet facilities outside. And inside, uninsulated lighting fixtures and the cardboard walls are visible in some of the hovels. The people living here say they have asked the council to build adequate housing, but the requests fall on deaf ears.
How much rent do you pay here?
30 a month. Went up this month. I've been paying 15.
How long have you lived here?
Oh, I've been here 10 years.
Do you have inside toilet?
No, sir.
Why do you think the city councilman in McKenzie would not want you to have a decent house?
Well, they just never have fixed one where we could have them.
What are y'all gonna do about all this?
Know what we can do.
This is what happened when we went to see one of the shacks and the landlord discovered we were there.
We came to see the lady who pays rent here, so we turn the camera on. Turn the camera on, man. He don't have to turn the camera on.
We have anyone come inside our home she wants.
This lady rents the room here.
She's renting property.
If she don't want to live here, she can move out. Is that understood?
We're not here to
all right. If any of this comes out on TV, you look out.
I beg your pardon?
You heard what?
Look out for what?
You ain't got my permission to sell nothing on this strip here.
The people who rent this property
This
allow us
ain't got
to come
permission to
in.
give you nothing.
Say what? Well, they paying the rent here.
That's right. That's all.
He later threatened to tear the shacks down, but so far he hasn't. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News, McKenzie, Alabama.
ran Huntsville last year. And he said the thing that amazed him was how bad.
We think that the ruling of the 11th Circuit is incorrect as a matter of law, and in all likelihood we'll pursue that matter further, either with the 11th Circuit or with the United States Supreme Court. In addition, though, the 11th Circuit apparently said that where we made our mistake was not asking that the Governor and Attorney General be held in contempt, and we intend to do that soon.
Got his leg broke last year by a car. One of the front runners, actually.
Yeah, there's bound to be that kind of stuff every now and then. The Vulcan is the week before Thanksgiving, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tax brochure that we put some information in for you, and if you allow children of Macon County, we're not with us. But this time, we're gonna
board, members of the media, visiting.
Make this difference according. There simply are not enough dollars coming into the public school system to do the job. Even worse, the few dollars that we have are being reduced by federal cutbacks, changes in the law, enactment of the current use bill, and other property tax measures.
I think that we'll still be in court, in the district court. I think that Judge Varner will try some other means. I'm merely speculating, but I assume that he's going to try some other means to reduce the population of the penitentiaries, even though there's a good faith effort going on to create more beds for inmates. But it's obvious that no other federal judge can take this method and try to release prisoners. It was a victory.
Yeah, the attorney for the inmates, John Carroll, has said that he would at least continue his efforts to release the inmates. Will you continue to fight those?
Each and every time Judge Varner attempts to release inmates, he will see my face in court.
Farmers movement called the populist movement that was very strong in the South. I think people, you know, the 1948 to 1970, something I meant to.
Yeah. Do you think
the offshore oil is on public property? You know how many hundreds of billions of dollars worth of oil is probably going to be made out of that. So what they do is they turn it over to big business, which gives a $400 million fee. I believe that's $450-something million fee. And in exchange uses it to make them richer and to increase the power of the oil corporations, which hits against us, rather than using the potential hundreds of billions of dollars of oil to benefit the people of Alabama.
now you've
I think that's the basic difference. The Democrats and Republicans, above all, say what's good for big business has to be good enough for working people, or they can lump it. I say what's good for working people has to be good enough for the society as a whole.
how would
Heavy rains, which brought an end to the problem of drought in the southeast, have brought with them another problem. swarms of mosquitoes, the worst in some areas since 1965, which have caused an outbreak of eastern equine encephalomyelitis, a brain disease which affects horses primarily, but which can also be transmitted to humans. Initial attempts to control the mosquito population by spraying have not worked. 2 deaths have been reported, one in Florida and one in Georgia. Dr. Maxie Nolan, a medical entomologist at the University of Georgia, says that's cause for concern.
We consider that to be an epidemic. We don't know how many mosquitoes are carrying the disease at this time. Secondly, we almost never have a case of Eastern in Georgia. So any number of cases is a tremendous need for concern.
Health authorities are urging communities to step up spraying of mosquito-infested areas and are telling people to wear protective clothing and to use repellents when they are near those areas.
Only one of the governor's 22-bill package of crime reforms failed to win support today. That bill would offer laws against racketeering. Both the House Judiciary and the Senate Judiciary Committee stopped the racketeering bill as they individually considered identical sets of the crime package. Governor James said the possible death of the racketeering bill is not a major loss, but it is a loss to his crime package. The governor suffered another partial loss as one of his 2 bills strengthening the Alabama Commission on Higher Education suffered a possible death. The Senate Education Committee decided to postpone a vote on the bill outlining the powers of the new commission, but the Senate committee did pass a bill setting the new commission up under constitutional authority. The House Ways and Means Committee passed both bills with only minor changes. The governor said he thought his AIC reform was moving very nicely. He said there is still no word from the Supreme Court for a requested advisory opinion on whether the proposed constitutional amendment setting up the commission is necessary for the commission to control courses at the constitutionally chartered University of Alabama and Auburn University. Other major bills of note to pass out of committee include Representative Lee Pegues and Senator Dewey White's bill to raise the legal drinking age from 19 to 21. Representative Dwayne Lewis and Senator Bill Smith's bill to strengthen drunk driving penalties, and Representative Jim Smith and John Teague's bill to stop the plea of insanity as a defense, a bill now being supported by Attorney General Charles Graddick in his 9-bill package of crime reforms. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
The Alabama Senate started just about on time. Senate President Pro Tem Fina St. John presided. The bulk of activity in the upper chamber was confined to committee reports. 11 more bills were introduced, but these bills will die if the special session only lasts 5 days because there won't be enough time to consider them. The Senate adopted a House resolution calling for a joint meeting of the House and Senate to discuss the financial condition of the state general fund. Senator Ted Little of Auburn amended that resolution to change the day the meeting would take place. The change was approved by the House, and the meeting is planned for Thursday. At least a dozen new bills were introduced in the House of Representatives. House members balked at a resolution setting up a legislative compensation commission similar to one already in existence for judges. The resolution, sponsored by Representative Jim Smith of Huntsville, was sent to the Rules Committee. The House also approved a Senate resolution setting up a joint interim committee to study the restoration project at Fort Toulouse and Fort Jackson near Montgomery. Both the House and Senate return at 9 in the morning to what promises to be the longest day so far of this special session. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
The mayor's budget for fiscal 83 adds up to $50,388,112. The largest single amount of money in the new budget goes to the Montgomery Police Department, just more than $9 million. It's an expenditure the mayor says is well worth it to keep crime down in Montgomery. The mayor also wants to see hazardous duty pay continued in 83 for policemen and firemen in the city. That's in addition to the 7% pay raise the mayor proposes for all city workers. The mayor says last year the city was unable to give its employees as much of a pay increase as they deserved. The mayor says the 83 proposal, along with merit and longevity increases, will mean the largest pay hike in history for city employees. That's in addition to a proposed increase in life insurance coverage for the workers. The mayor says the new budget also contains a line item for a new park facility at South Lawn Elementary School. Although there are no new taxes in the proposed budget, the city is expecting more tax money, the result of statewide property tax reappraisals. That increase despite a cut in local property tax rates.
reports.
The mayor says the city has survived a year of rough financial waters and can look to a better year ahead. He calls his new budget proposal realistic and obtainable. He says it won't allow the city to do all that it would like to do, but it will allow the city to do what is necessary and affordable. Reporting from City Hall, Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
I just said that I thought that the law was quite clear, and there's never been an attempt on the part of any other federal judge in this entire country to do what he did, and it was obvious to us and apparently the 11th Circuit, and we just have to take each case now as it comes.
For the handful of industrialists and bankers, whether it's run for working people. The biggest issue that the other candidates are talking about, in as much as they're talking about anything, and what's the biggest concern of people, is the economy. Well, what's the Democrats and Republicans' program for the economy? Take the war budget, which amounts to $1.6 trillion over the next 5 years, which could literally create hundreds of millions of jobs. And instead of using it to create new Vietnams, new wars of aggression that people in this country don't want, use it to create jobs instead, to create the things that we need. I think the work week should be reduced at no loss in pay to spread the available work around to everyone who's looking for a job. It's come down to the point that there has to be a choice between human needs and profits. In campaigning, you can find that in asking around at your grocery store or your workplace or your school. The fact that people realize that the Democrats and Republicans aren't offering us any answers. It's shown by the fact that a minority of the people actually do vote.
You make a dent, though, in the tremendous power structure that exists because of those two parties. I mean, that's the question. Even if people do agree with you, can those people be organized?
The House Judiciary and Senate Judiciary Committees carried the heaviest load as they considered identical sets of the governor's crime reform package. All but one of the 22 bills set met the test. That bill would have established a law against racketeering practices. Attorney General Charles Graddick was on hand to watch the approval of a 9-bill package of crime reforms he's supporting. Several of the bills in Attorney General's package duplicated the governor's bills. The two Judiciary Committees also considered a slew of other crime-related bills which appear to be dominating this special session. One senator said this afternoon, "I bet criminals will be glad to see this pre-election year session end." The House Ways and Means Committee approved the governor's second reform package designed to strengthen the Alabama Commission on Higher Education. But the Senate committee only approved one of the two bills. The Senate committee postponed a vote on a bill outlining the new commission's powers, but approved a bill creating the commission under the state constitution. Governor James says he's hoping the Supreme Court will issue a requested opinion Wednesday on whether the proposed constitutional amendment to create the new commission is really needed to allow the agency to control the University of Alabama and Auburn University, since each is chartered under the Constitution. Wednesday will be the first day any bill can be debated on the floor of the two chambers. And as Dennis Latham reports, that meant the two chambers could turn their attentions to other issues when they met late this afternoon.
In the House of Representatives, once committee reports were out of the way, the membership quickly settled on a timetable for a unique joint meeting of the House and Senate. Representative Pete Turnham of Auburn, concerned about Finance Department reports of trouble in the state's general fund, succeeded in setting up what's called a committee of the whole to look into the apparent money shortage. That meeting has been scheduled for Thursday. An idea that didn't get such a warm reception came from Representative Jim Smith of Huntsville. Representative Smith introduced a resolution establishing a legislative compensation commission, similar to one already existing for judges. The proposal sparked immediate discussion and went to the Committee on Rules for consideration. On the other side of the Capitol in the Senate, over a dozen more bills were introduced, many of them local bills. Unless the session goes longer than 5 days, these bills won't have time to pass. Committee reports were made and the Senate recessed so that other committees could meet and consider even more bills. Both the House and Senate convene in the morning to begin debate on a large number of bills. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
By our children. Our ability to have a sound educational program
is being hurt tremendously. Teacher of any capability can do the job of educating our children alone. People frequently believe that we can have quality education with only teachers. Under these conditions, even though we continue to try. Superintendent of Education, I respectfully solicit the support in July of 1981. There simply are not enough dollars coming into the public school system to do the job.
I think the choice is pretty simple. Do we want education, or do we want to pay less for something that could be better?
We cannot make a better investment.
Let's not be too penurious or cheap to pay for the education of our children.
One of the factors in the dispute here in McKenzie is the ongoing battle over the police chief, Dudley Godwin. Repeatedly, Mayor Betty Stinson hires Chief Godwin, and the city council fires him.
What the law enforcement situation was before you knew Chief?
There were certain young people that could do most anything they wanted to and get away with it. Most of them, though, were harassed unnecessarily.
During a council meeting earlier this month, a number of McKenzie citizens attended protesting the latest firing of Chief Godwin.
He is the best police that we've ever had in 50 years I've been here.
I'll say that for the last, up to the last 6 months.
All right, why? Just
Well,
the way you're
because-
done him.
I don't know.
Oh, let me tell you something else. Whenever he rested, left your meal.
No,
Grant-
no,
Hold on,
no,
hold on, let me talk. Let me talk. Let me talk. Hold on, don't tell me. I've been watching. When he rested, Fletcher Neal and his grandson.
I walk on my stick.
That meeting grew so heated, the two councilmen at the center of the controversy, Otis Watson and Earl Bennett, finally stormed out of the room.
That's perfectly legal. Just as a mess as this, it's perfectly legal to get out.
Mayor Stinson reinstated Chief Godwin after the meeting, but Chief Godwin is chief in name only. Councilman Watson has the keys to the city's police car in his pocket and won't give them up. So the Battle of McKenzie, Alabama rages on with no solution in sight. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News, McKenzie, Alabama.
And we're in trouble economically, and we're in trouble in terms of this country's continuing commitment to racial justice. In this convention, we will renew our commitment to 25 more years of struggle for economic and political justice. We're determined to hold fast to our dreams.
There's something wrong when a man can run for office on an anti-special interest campaign and then turn around and take more special interest money than anybody in the state, any senator that serves in the state legislature. There's something wrong when a man brags about not voting against every tax bill for 4 years that he served and at the same time vote to spin the state into bankruptcy. There's something wrong with our system when a single man can cause the state general fund budget to go into proration. Or it can come up
But Senator
before the
Harrison
body of
says
the
what Smith is doing is nothing
Senator
unusual
Harrison
during the
serves on that Rules
campaign.
Committee.
Harrison calls it just talk and not worth commenting on.
There's going to be a lot of dirty mudslinging tactics, and I'm not going to get involved in that. I'm going to run a positive, honest, decent campaign. I'm going to continue to work hard for all of the people of District 26.
Smith claims Senator Harrison was bought and paid for in the last election in 1978.
All of the
Quoting a
people in my
Birmingham
district, and I
News
believe
article,
most of
Smith
them know that
charges
I've done a
that
good
the
job and
senator
gonna
received
continue
more than
to represent all of the
$15,000
people
in special interest money,
District
even
26
though
and
Smith
Elmore,
says
Montgomery
Harrison
County to the best of
campaigned
my ability and
against
try to do
special
away with
interests.
crime and
But
lower their
Harrison says
taxes
he
and look
represents
out for
all
their
the
family
people.
budget.
As
I'm
for
gonna run a
collecting
positive
any more
campaign. I'm
political
not gonna
action
get
money
into a
during
dirty
this
mudslinging
campaign,
contest with anyone.
Harrison says he's
Do you
not sure.
anticipate any PAC money
Gina
this
Gregory,
election?
WSFA TV News.
I don't know.
A064.0010
Hugh Davis says Jim Folsom Jr., Lynn Greer, and Billy Joe Camp didn't want to hold the hearing this close to the election. Davis says the commissioners wanted to review Alabama Power Company's request for a $454 million rate hike at a more politically opportune time.
Frankly, I think it was postponed because they were afraid that they'd have to vote for a rate increase before the election.
Last week, Commissioner Greer said the hearing should be delayed because the economy might improve enough to change the utility's financial standing.
Whether I'm right in believing that it's a political maneuver or not, it certainly looks like one, and I think it was extremely unwise.
Davis doesn't think any of the commissioners have pushed hard enough to keep the utilities from passing on their advertising costs to the consumers, or for the authority to phase in rate increases. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
The Save Our River Committee is being formed because some residents say part of their heritage is being taken away from them. Committee Chairman Joe Billy Fain says not enough water is being run through Jordan Dam to create the whitewater beauty that was once part of their lives. Instead, he says too much water is being diverted to the Walter Bolton Dam, which bypasses the Coosa River at Wetumpka and flows to Montgomery. Fain says they're not asking that all water be run through Jordan Dam.
We know that the power company's got an investment in Walter Bolton, but we feel like that we do deserve some water through here. At the present time, I imagine we might be getting 1% of the water through Jordan Dam, 99% through Walter Bolton.
Alabama Power Company spokesman Chris Conway says water is being diverted to the Walter Bolton Dam because that facility can generate twice as much electricity as Jordan Dam. Members of the Save Our River Committee plan to attend the Wetumpka City Council meeting next Monday to ask for help in their effort to once again be able to enjoy the scenic beauty of the Coosa River in their city. Mac Carmack, WSFA TV News.
Really, the power company doesn't, they could possibly help us out, but the Federal Power Commission, the Environmental Protection Agency, and others like that are really the ones that tell the power company what to do. We know that the power company's got an investment in Walter Bolton, but we feel like that we do deserve some water through here. At the present time, I imagine we might be getting 1% of the water through Jordan Dam, 99% through Walter Bolton.
And there's always been flow through that dam, and there will continue to be flow through that dam. In fact, there are minimum requirements from a variety of regulating agencies, and we presently exceed those minimum requirements. And very basically, it's 2,400 acre-feet every 72 hours, and if you can visualize an acre a foot deep in water, that's what we're talking about, 2,400 times that amount every 72 hours rolls through Jordan Dam.
State money for that one, sir. We're using our local tuition.
You and I both know they are in the buildings and the labs and electrical engineering.
That's what I'm about to say, because I think it's good that you look to the future and say that, because now we do have that kind of Alabama.
They're going to sue the Commission on Higher Education. They're going to sue each of the four-year institutions.
Mr. Raines votes no. Mr. Williams votes aye. Change.
Class C felony from 1 to 10 years to start. Let's say you're convicted of theft and theft, and it's a 9 years to 1 year probation.
Let me say this at the very outset. I'm going to have prepared some resolutions from this day forward to ask the Senate to act on this. Maybe one day they'll get it to a vote over there. And since the presiding officer is not there apparently this week, maybe we can get it passed. So I ask you again that maybe we can get something done on this to help the unemployed.
These bills are desirable, and although many of these bills will be welcomed by the people of the state of Alabama, it nevertheless is hard to make.
We've reached accommodation on what we've got.
In other words, you're telling me. You recall us discussing that paragraph in judiciary?
You talking about?
So he asked me that question yesterday, and I haven't been able to get a hand on it since. Senator
Mr. President, I move to carry this bill over temporarily so they can straighten out the problems with it.
Mr. President,
It nevertheless is hard to make a logical case that extraordinary circumstances exist in this state.
Davis says the commissioners let the public down last week when they voted to delay an important hearing until September. Davis says the hearing on Alabama Power's request for a $454 million rate increase should have gone on as scheduled.
And the commissioners don't want to run the risk of having to vote for an increase, and they also don't want to run the risk of having the Supreme Court tell them again if they issue another zero order. They don't want to be told by the Supreme Court that they have ignored their duties and have failed to follow the evidence.
Davis says the commissioners don't take their responsibilities seriously enough. According to the candidate, the courts have told the commissioners at least twice to go back to the legislature for more or clearer authority, but the commissioners haven't done anything about it. Davis says he's already drafted 2 bills that give the PSC enough power to keep utilities from passing on their advertising costs to the consumers. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
As long as we've got people of this caliber serving in our state legislature and making the laws of this state that we live by. These are facts.
I'm not even going to comment on something like that. That's not even worth commenting. I represent all of the people of my district and have represented all of the people of my district, and I believe most of them know that I've done a good job and going to continue to represent all of the people of District 26 and Elmore Montgomery County to the best of my ability and try to do away with crime and lower their taxes and look out for their family budget. And I'm going to run a positive campaign, and I'm not going to get into a dirty mudslinging contest with anyone.
By getting out there and doing a lot of PR work. It's very important. I love the sport of volleyball, and to me, it's an excellent sport to teach young ladies on how to, be competitive and still be a young lady and be an athlete. And I believe in it, and I believe in athletics as a very healthy form of living. And to promote it, you know, I'm just going to go around telling people and showing people through the camps what volleyball can do for a young lady and what it can do for a school.
Last session, Senator Don Harrison single-handedly allowed the judges of this state to get a 34% pay raise. That's 34%. Phenomenal, isn't it? But in addition to handing out an obscene pay raise of this amount, the incumbent senator's action now is causing proration of the state general fund budget. This is the fund from which everything except education is operated. This proration will mean that there's not enough money available to meet the expenditures of the state government.
I'm sure this is campaign time, and there's going to be a lot of dirty mudslinging tactics, and I'm not going to get involved in that. I'm going to run a positive, honest, decent campaign. I'm going to continue to work hard for all of the people of District 26, like I am in this special session by introducing a large portion of the crime package and bills to alleviate the high ad valorem tax situation that we run into.
But could you be considered as single-handedly putting the general fund into proration?
I'm not even going to comment on something like that. That's not even worth commenting on.
The House worked for about 10 hours today considering the governor's two reform packages and other legislation. Representative Lee Pegues handled the reform strengthening the Alabama Commission on Higher Education. He had no problem winning approval of a proposed law outlining Commission's powers, a bill dependent on the survival of another measure giving the Commission constitutional power. It was here that Representative Pegues ran into strong opposition.
But it simply is not fair, in my judgment, to come along and change two universities that are already set up by the Constitution. They're operating on it, and they're operating beautifully.
But Pegues argued the constitutional amendment was necessary to control courses at Alabama